Good morning, Masterminders. Jill Stoppel Davis here with Excel Wellness Studio. Kelly and the team has asked me to share some tips about marketing and the designing and development of your flyers. A little bit about me and my background. I was formally trained as a graphic designer. My degrees in fine arts. I went to art school, and that's what I did for a number of years. I worked in advertising and marketing as a graphic designer while I did fitness on the side. Several years into that, I made the jump into full-time fitness. So that background really serves me well, and I'm able to do majority of all my own design work. So I'm going to try and give you some really simple tips. So even if you aren't designing your own and you're working with a graphic designer, maybe this will help you give feedback to the designer when you look at your flyers. And as far as programs and doing them on your own, I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage to recommend because I do use professional programs like Adobe InDesign and Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. So if you guys are using other programs and you're comfortable with them, that's great. That's just not where my knowledge is, so I really can't help in that department. But hopefully visually this will give you some things to look for. So tip number one is readability. You know, you want people to be able to look at this and know what your message is and know what you're conveying. I like to stick to, just 2 fonts on a page so that everything flows and looks like it goes together, and you don't have, 3 different fonts on different places all over the page. That looks really discombobulated if you start getting a little bit crazy with your fonts. I also like to think about, a big, bold headline and how you make something stand out. I'm going to show you some of my flyers as we talk through this. But for instance, on this one, you've got a pretty big, bold headline. Boom, that's what I want you to see first. But then on these happy hour flyers, the date and time is really important to me. And I try to stick to bullet points. That's something we'll talk about in a minute. But think bold headlines. Another way to make a headline stick out on the page is to use something called a drop shadow or an outer glow, which is what this is. That's how I'm able to put a title over a photo or a darker background and still have it pop. That's part of my tip too with readability is be aware of your backgrounds. There's nothing wrong with having a background on a page, but you want to make sure your text can still read over that. So for instance, that text has a different, I don't know if this video will show you, but it has a little bit of a different color underneath it because this red heart background was too dark. Got another one like that in here that shows it just a little bit better. So that's an outer glow or a drop shadow in a different color so that the text stands out from this darker red background. So that's something to be really aware of. Speaking of backgrounds, I asked a couple of you to send your flyers over. I only have one. I have Alicia, so I'm going to pick on her a little bit. Here's an example of a background that I love the concept and the idea of having the grass because she's talking about going green and working outside. However, it's really distracting to me. So what I would do on this background is just lighten it up. You can make that, you can still use the grass, but use a control called transparency or something just to make the photograph actually lighter so that text is more readable. We'll come back to this in a little bit with some other suggestions. So tip number one is readability. A good way to judge that, if you're designing it yourself, sometimes we get a little closed off looking at the screen. So 2 recommendations, always print it out. You'll see I have like dozens of printouts, and once I print it out and see it on paper, I'm like, oh gosh, that doesn't look quite right. And I start marking it up. Let me move this here and here. Also have 1 or 2 other eyes. Always look at your stuff. They're going to catch things and see things differently than you do, especially when you've been looking at it for hours and working on it. So hand it to one of your trainers or one of your clients and say, what do you see first? on there because we want to know what their eye goes to first. And if their eye goes to the photograph and not to the message, you've got some work to do. So, do they see the information that you want them to, and do they understand what you're promoting? If they don't understand what you're promoting, then again, you need to look at your photos and the information that you have there. Tip number 2 is consistency. You hear a lot about branding and marketing, and what is branding other than how you talk about your business and convey it. It also comes down to your marketing collateral. Does your website use the same colors as your flyers? And are those colors on your price sheets? And does everything look the same? Because you want someone to see, even if you're not using a print flyer, I start with a print-based flyer and I use that same flyer. You'll see this on Facebook posts. You'll see portions of this flyer and the same copy on my website and event pages. You want people to see your company's flyers or your happy hour flyers and be like, oh, that's Excel Wellness Studio. That's another one of their flyers. So think about colors. Are you using the same fonts? Very important. If you don't, hopefully you have a logo. If you don't have a logo and you don't use a logo and maybe you use more of a typeface for your business name, you want to make sure that you always use the same font for your name. I have a specific font and look that anytime I have Excel Wellness Studio or our website at the bottom of a page, that's always the same. It's always, our information is always in the same type font, and it's always consistent. Really important, because that helps people understand that it's the same business. So think about that, and if you can do that better. Another way to keep consistency and look, if we come back to a happy hour flyer, is to create a template. If you have a program that you're going to deliver every month, but maybe the date changes, or it's a program you're going to do every quarter, and there's not a lot of information that changes, but it's dates and times and things like that, I highly suggest a template. All our happy hour flyers look the same. We do a happy hour once a month. All I do every month to get it ready is go in and change the background color and the dates. This was our December happy hour, so we did red to green. For January, I have a blue background, kind of because it's snowy here. So it takes me less than 5 minutes to change the color of the background and the date. Nothing else changes. People see this. They don't have to look at it too long. They see our happy hour workout. They know, boom, oh, Excel's having another happy hour. Really easy on my part, and I have a good, consistent message each time. I want to show you another form of consistency. Even if it's not in your flyers, I do a lot of printed material for our pricing. You'll see everything. My logo is green, so we have our Excel. That's the specific green I use in everything. I don't use versions of the green. It's the same color. And you'll always see me use a lot of blue and orange. So on another price sheet for our group training, that looks really similar. People would know, hey, that's Excel. We get into our Saturday boot camp. Again, you're going to see those same color blocks. A lot of similarities there. I don't have to reinvent the wheel each time that way, and people know that's part of our business. That's part of our program. Here's a free week coupon where I can just write in the dates there. And so again, it repeats some of that same look. I highly recommend you do that. It's going to give you a more professional, $1 million business look versus a trainer that's printing out some things from Word at home. Really important to set yourself apart, fake it till you make it, and really put your best foot forward. I want to show you also, when you think about consistency, Think about taking it to your email blast as well. That should look familiar from one of the flyers I just showed you. I used the same photo and title, and this is a printout of one of our email blasts. So again, you see a portion of the happy hour flyer. Once I've created the wording and stuff, I use the same wording on my emails, so that helps with consistency a little bit. Okay, so readability, consistency. Let's move on. Stock photos. Photos give you more of the professional appearance as well if you use from a stock source. I know a lot of us have snapshots from our events, from our boot camps. We have pictures of our clients, and those are great. But bottom line, when you print some of those photos out, the quality is not the best. The color may be off. It may not be a close-up. They could be grainy or low quality. So I would challenge you to think about using those photos, but using them on a Facebook business page, a Facebook event page if you're marketing a specific boot camp, or obviously your website are great places to use those. You're probably going to say, Jill, stock photos are really expensive. They don't have to be. My best resource for stock photos is shutterstock.com. Shutterstock has a pay-as-you-go option. For a flat rate of $49, you can do 5 downloads over a period of months as long as you save your login. And so every time I need a new photo, I'm going to pop up there and, I still have 3 of my 5 downloads left. I'm going to search for it, download that high resolution. Make sure you pick a high resolution if you're going to print anything. Low resolution if you're not. High resolution is 300 DPI, and you should see that on there. And then you can always res it down and use the same one on a website or on an email. And that's something that a designer could help you with. Having a professional photo, for instance, this one, that's far better. Plus I can use the colors out of that photo. That's going to be better than anything I can take on the fly in my business. And then you're able to use that photo other places. I always think about what's a photo that I'm going to be able to reuse again that I'm not locked into. I could do another flyer about maybe a female fitness program, and this photo would be great. I'd probably move the placement of it or shrink it down a little bit. But you want to keep those so you can get the most out of your money. If you're working with a graphic designer, they should have access to stock photos, but you might find out how they're charging you for photos. If they're not upcharging you for a photo because it's something they already have, great. If you're wanting a specific photo and you've seen it or you want to do the research for it and download it off Shutterstock, pay for it, and send it to them, it could save you some cash. Just a good question to ask. Moving on, I may have talked about this a little bit already, but focal point. You always want to think about what your focal point on that flyer is. Again, hand it to someone. What do they see first? What do you want that person to see first? Back to this flyer, I want them to see 10 for 10 referral program first. That's the most important thing to me. I want them to read a really quick blurb, and then even if they don't read this, I want them going to the bullet points, boom, and down to our website. Bullet points are really great, and just remember, my next tip, going right into it, is simple. You want to keep your flyers simple and not full of a lot of text. The best tip I can give you is your flyer is a vehicle to direct people to your website or to your Facebook event page. If you have all that information on the flyer, number one, either they're not going to read it, it's too overwhelming and it's too much. And then if all your information is there, they're never going to go onto your website and find out more about your company or other programs that might be a better fit for them. So that's really, a good thought to have. If you have, for instance, a big program and a lot of rules, and you're like, gosh, I want all those rules and the ins and outs, and the registration dates and things on my flyer, but it's just too overwhelming. It's too much information. And you're actually going to do a print flyer, think about using the back side. I've used the back side for just, you want to stick to one color, black text, because it's going to be cheaper to print. But I've just, boom, down the back side, listed out the details that you don't want to muck up the front side of your flyer. So again, consistency on the font and the website, direct them there. We've got some, I don't know if I have one here, but a lot that say, it says at the bottom, find all event details, times, and registration. And then again, it has website, phone number, boom, right there. We want them to go on and look for more, or even better, I want them to call me and I want to talk to them on the phone. So again, what I would say on this flyer is that headline is great, but I would just love to see it pop a little bit more. Maybe the tagline is not so important, but with that bar behind it now, I see that before I see the headline. So I would just kind of flip that. And then two different pieces of information here seem really disconnected. I'm not really sure what the program is. It might be helpful to have what times it's offered, and maybe just putting all the photos over here and kind of making this area for text, lightening up the background. This is great down here, but you could probably get rid of a few of those words and just make the website a bit bolder. More information, details here. Try a free class. So just to regroup, readability, make sure you're not using a lot of fonts, that things are bold and stand out. Be careful with your backgrounds. Consistency across all your flyers for your business. It's something that you can do. It'll take time. Don't do it all at once. Think about creating templates. Shutterstock for stock photos. Make sure you're not using anything you're pulling off the web for free. You can get in a lot of trouble for that. It can come back to you. Plus, your business isn't going to look as professional if you're using snapshots or photos that you take. Make sure you always have a focal point. Pull in someone to help you. What do they see first on that flyer? Is that what you want them to read first? And then always keep things as simple and as clean as you can. There's nothing wrong with some space, some white space, or your focal, some nice photography, and direct them elsewhere for all the information. This is just a vehicle, another way to get people to your sign-up pages and to your websites. And then think of this as the same thing. When you create a flyer, whether you print it or not, that's what you're going to use in an email, on a Facebook event page, and on a website, and in personal emails if you're reaching out to people. So hopefully this gave you some good takeaway tips, and please email me with any specific questions. I would be happy to help. It's Jill at excelwellnessstudio.com. Everybody have a great day. Thanks.